Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Danielle and I wanted to hop on today and do another foundation face-off with the Pat McGrath Labs new Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Foundation, as well as the Dior Backstage Face and Body Foundation. Now, I've actually never tried the Dior Backstage Face and Body Foundation. I have a couple samples. I just opened this one up to shade match myself. And I've been using this actually since I bought it the day it came out, and I've been using it pretty regularly since. So I'm actually more familiar with this than I am with that. But I've been hearing a lot of people use the Dior Backstage foundation as their sort of similar foundation to this when they're talking about this. So I figured we might as well put them to the test, and I've been meaning to try that out as well. And then if you have the Dior Backstage Face and Body, you might be able to gauge whether or not you want this, if you want a similar formula, if it's too similar and you don't need both. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start with the Pat McGrath since I'm more familiar with it. I wear the shade 9, light medium 9. I originally was not particularly interested in purchasing this foundation. But then I heard videos of her like talking about it at the launch event, and I saw the swatches online and I guessed my shade, and then I went into store. I happened to be next to a Sephora the day it launched. And I went in and I picked the right shade, which I was like, is that it's a sign? I have to buy the foundation now. So I bought it. I also put it on my skin and I just really liked the way my skin looked. Since then, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people, it's hard. Every time I apply it, I feel like it kind of does a different thing. It's hard to figure out like how to make it do certain things and have certain effects. Like some days it will grab onto my texture and other days it won't, but I will be using the same primer. And, you know, some days at the end of the day, it does kind of break apart. Some days it doesn't. So I haven't quite figured out like how to make it do what I want, but every time I wear it, my skin looks good. So it's like, I can't help it. It's a really sheer coverage if you haven't watched other reviews before. I really wish they'd called it actually a face and body foundation. I think that would have given people a better understanding of what they were walking into, because it really feels like that sort of super sheer but buildable coverage. So that's one half of my face done, no foundation. You can still see some of the redness peeking through in my cheeks, but here's the lighting in here is awful, I know. I'm just too lazy right now. But yes, that's one face with the Pat McGrath Labs. I do want to mention, sorry, I do have my skincare down and just an SPF, the Smooth and Poreless Super Goop, which is kind of Smooth and Poreless Matte Mineral. It's like primary in nature. And I just used, I think they don't make these anymore, but a Morphe E44 brush, like a rounded foundation brush for this. I find that it applies a lot better with a foundation brush. I usually will go over it with a sponge, but I don't think I actually need to today. Again, nice and consistent. So this is the Dior Backstage. This is the shade 2N. In other Dior products, I wear shades in the 2 range. Like I used to wear 200 in Dior Forever. Now I wear 2.5, and I guess is what that shade is, but this looked like it was close enough for me. I'm applying this with a Sigma Flat Kabuki. What is it, S21, F80? Wow, and it's applying it is super similar. That's so crazy. I mean, I guess I'm sort of late to the game with this guy. It's a little... The shade's a little different. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. This side seems like a little yellower, and this side might be like a little like peachier almost. This side of my face has more to cover. I have some like popped zits up here that weren't ready to be popped, so they're looking kind of fucked up, as well as the broken capillaries I always have on my cheek. I guess I'm going in with a good light second layer of the Dior Backstage. Maybe I'll do that with the Pat McGrath as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in so the coverage is a little more even. I did do 2 layers of the Dior. So now I'm gonna go in and do another layer of the Pat McGrath Labs. Okay, great. Now that they're both on my face, they look similar enough. This shade is still a touch lighter than that shade. Okay, so here's a little bit better lighting. We also have a friend with us now. Couldn't handle the attention not being paid to her. Oh, you're definitely gonna wear off my foundation, aren't you? Aren't you? So this is the Dior side. And this is the Pat McGrath side. Oh, I need to go over my nose there a little bit. But there are the 2 sides. I actually did want to hop on here now that I'm touching it. So a complaint I've had with the Pat McGrath is it does not dry down all the way. It does stay like a little sticky. I don't hate that. I have other foundations that will do that. But actually right now it feels particularly tacky. And this too doesn't feel like it's dried down all the way, but it's a slightly more manageable level of like wetness, tackiness on the face. But they are kind of like, if you didn't like that about this foundation, I don't know if that will get better. This foundation's worse. But it's kind of the same idea. I don't set my face with powder. I will say that now, I guess, as opposed to later. So I've tried that with this. It didn't particularly like help or really get rid of that, and I don't like it. I don't think it looks good on me, so I don't do it. But just so you know, if that's like a part of your process, that might help a little bit. But I noticed when I did it with the Pat McGrath, it wasn't like, didn't completely take that away. Okay, so this is the finished makeup look. Again, this is the Dior side, this is the Pat McGrath side. I'll show you kind of close up. So you can still, it's definitely like a lighter coverage, right? Because you can still see my broken capillaries through there. See how and yeah, these little spots on my forehead. And this is the Pat McGrath side. Down here, I tried to sort of make it better, but it is like the pigment's just kind of sitting on my skin. And in general, you know, I don't go for a super poreless finish, but both of these foundations kind of cling on to my texture a bit in a way that I'm not obsessed with. This one looks a little bit better, but that's still more, I mean, that looks significantly worse than this. How crazy is that? But yeah, it's not something I look for in a foundation. And same thing, even with this like part down here, that's not usually how this foundation sits on my skin, so it's just really hard to get a consistent result with it. I've also found that sometimes powders are patchy on the Pat McGrath. Everything went on okay today. I wasn't planning on wearing bronzer. I just put it on to like test, and nothing, you know, everything went over relatively smooth. But same thing, it's like when I powder it, when I don't powder it, like I haven't been able to figure out what is making it not perform the way I wanted to perform some days. And then some days they look fucking amazing. I like can't tell what it is. But that's what I look like today. I will check in with you guys in a couple hours. It's about, maybe now it's like 10 o'clock here. So I will see you this afternoon after this is sat on my skin for a little bit. Okay, so here we are at 4 hours. Pat McGrath side. Dior Backstage side. Here is what it is looking like. Let me move my bangs. This side appears to be a little, I'm making sure it's not like the lighting, a little dewier. My oils are coming through a bit. I've also noticed that like, it's kind of the same thing I said before, but my texture continues to be emphasized over here. I have pores. It's not like I'm trying to hide that I don't have pores, but like that seems kind of normal, and this seems emphasized, if that makes sense. Like it's not like that side's ignoring, they're not there. I guess both sides are kind of breaking up around my nose, but I do sort of touch my nose probably throughout the day. I'm not the best at taking a hold of that. Same thing with my chin. Plus my cat kind of licks me on the chin, so whoops. But yeah, I'm kind of preferring the way the Dior Backstage side is wearing to the Pat McGrath. Ooh, that looks crazy. But that's the main thing I'm noticing right now is continuing for texture to come up. It's sort of same thing. Like down here, it's just like not settled the way I would love it to be. And this side is, yeah, starting to get a little oilier than this side. I believe this claims to have kind of like a satin matte finish. I think this does too, actually. But here we are, 4 hours in. See you in another 2 hours or so. Hey guys, so it's been about 8 hours and I really wanted to do a check-in, but someone fell asleep on me and now it's been like 8 hours and 20 minutes and it doesn't look like she's gonna be moving anytime soon. So I figured we'd try and do this 8-hour check-in like this. We're also losing light outside, so I wanted to make sure to do it while I still had light. So the well-lit side is the Pat McGrath side. Same things I talked about before, breaking up around my chin, texture. You know, I still see it. Like it wears off very naturally, like if it probably has worn off in sections, but it's not super obvious, which I've talked about before is something I prefer. Let's look at the forehead, which is like protected. When I was looking in the mirror about like an hour and a half ago, I could see like a pretty sort of severe is the wrong word, like a notable line of demarcation. That's not right either, but just I could tell that the two sides looked different. This side, kind of like what I was saying before, the pigment just sort of sits, once the foundation dries down a little bit, I think the pigment sits on your skin and doesn't sort of melt in so much with it. And then this side, oh there we go, now the lighting's better, is the Dior Backstage side. I'm definitely liking the way that's wearing, except, ooh, I'm not gonna be able to light it well enough. It is breaking up around my nose, or, oh, sorry, this is literally the worst possible lighting to show you that. And it's also not great on my chin, but it's not, I mean, I definitely have a decent amount of texture right now, but not the worst foundation I've ever used in that regard. But I do like, same thing, it's wearing off really naturally and nice. Same thing I was saying before, you can definitely, my oils are sort of coming through on my cheek a little more so than they are on the other side. And yeah, it was interesting. I was watching, I've seen a lot of reviews for this foundation already, just because I filmed a first impressions and I was so sort of undecided on where I felt about it, and every day that I used it, I just like still wasn't making up my mind, kind of the way I was talking before. And it's interesting, the more I've watched reviews, it kind of seems like everyone I've watched has been that way, like been like, I'm liking this, but I don't, like there's something that's not fully clicking, I don't fully understand it. And then I was watching, Kathleen Lights just posted a video to the day that I'm filming this, trying it out with some other new makeup, and it's interesting because she said the primer and the powder both really filled in her pores up here, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's why my pores don't look so good, is because they're sort of designed to be used with products that are supposed to help with that. And then I feel like she also had a similar comment about the way it was around her chin, that it was just sort of like sitting on her chin, that the pigment looked weird. So it was interesting. I also have, I didn't even mention this, I have combination skin, but my dryness is really dry. I'm eczema prone, so I have a compromised skin barrier. I present more like normal now with my skincare. I can basically keep things at like an even keel when I'm in my normal skincare routine. So my skin is definitely like dry and dehydrated, but not, I don't have patches and stuff right now, at least, especially in the summer. So Kathleen has dry skin, so I wonder if that's partly why we're getting some of the same effects. But I will do one final check-in, maybe two, if we're feeling optimistic. I'm gonna bump up my eye makeup a bit because I am being social tonight, and but I won't change anything with my face makeup. and I will check in with you guys at the end of the day. Probably not in natural lighting, so take it all in, baby. And say hello to my cat. Okay, so it's now close to 9-ish hours, and I'm touching up my makeup. I did a little more on my eyes, but now that I can see better, at least in this light, I don't know if you'll be able to see better in this light, but I will. Over here on the Dior side, I am seeing some dryness, like some kind of patching and like, you know, breaking apart right in here. This was what I was talking about on the nose, all through there, which isn't happening as drastically over here. And then this is the rest of the face. I guess you can see better in this light. And then here's my forehead. I would actually say at this point, both sides kind of look equally bad on my forehead. Actually, if anything, I dislike the Dior side more. The same thing that's happening down here is happening up here, where it's kind of clinging to dryness and breaking apart on that side of my face. I see it less on this side, although, you know, it's not fresh. You can tell it's not like brand spanking new. But, you know, I don't feel like I would have to redo my makeup. If I was going out, I wouldn't redo my base makeup anyways, even if I wasn't doing this wear test. So that's where we're at, and I'll see you later. Hey guys, so this is gonna be my final check-in. It's been about 14 hours, so that's a little extreme. I mean, whose makeup really looks good anymore after that? I mean, from far away, I actually look fine. I'm not like disappointed. It's like nothing to be expected. In fact, you know, it looks pretty good. I'm not disappointed. When I take a closer look, we'll start with the forehead because that's where I feel like you can kind of tell more things because it's probably been less touched by me. So the Dior side, I feel like is, how do I not, is clinging to dry patches and like around those like zits I have. I don't know if you can see it clearly enough. Plus I like can't not wrinkle my forehead. I'm sorry. But the Pat McGrath side I feel like is kind of clinging to my pores a little more. I guess they kind of look the same on camera. I mean, if anything, the Dior side looks worse, but that side of my forehead looks worse in general. So on the rest of my face, same things, you know. I mean, it's definitely starting to slightly break up, really clinging to my texture. You know, maybe if I treated, sorry, I'm really dry here, and then I also ate something, so it's not helping. It's definitely worn up around my chin, but sort of in these spots. That's the Dior side. That's the Pat McGrath side. I feel like people never get close enough in these things, so now you just got real close and personal with my skin. The Dior Backstage foundation is $40 for like 1.6 ounces. The Pat McGrath is $68 for 1.18. They're super comparable, actually. I wouldn't, like, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably buy the Dior if I was just buying it, you know, not for like actual use rather than to like try out, and because I love testing Pat products. But I'm definitely not disappointed in my purchase. I think there's still like a time and a place where this is a really nice foundation option. If I had to do it all over again, I think I'd buy the Dior. Even if like I ran out of that to fill the void of a foundation like that, I think I'd buy the Dior. I'm not, you know, if you already have it, then you don't need this. If you find a better shade match in one and not in the other, and that's really your main concern, that's definitely like a thing to take in consideration. The Pat McGrath has a huge shade range for, you know, a luxury foundation. I forget how many it is off the top of my head, but I think more than, you know, 20 plus. I don't think the Dior Backstage is as extensive, but I could be wrong. It's also, I think, pretty vast, especially for a Dior foundation. But, you know, I tend to looking like this. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, I guess more so I'm more well versed in the Pat McGrath foundation because I've been using it a lot more. But if you have any questions, please leave them in a comment below and I will be happy to answer them for you. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe to my channel, and I hope that I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.